This is your daily news brief with Karan Rao and Aisha Mehta. So, imagine holding just a standard printed exam paper.
Right. Usually if something like that leaks, it's just, a localized stress fracture for a few students.
Exactly. But today, we are looking at how a few leaked sheets of paper from the NEET medical entrance exam have, well, they've basically revealed a critical structural failure in the foundation of the state. I mean, we are sitting here in July 2026, and the sheer scale of the youth uprising currently shaking Indian politics is just staggering.
Yeah, it really is a systemic domino effect. What started as just an academic grievance over an entrance exam has morphed into this massive nationwide crisis of institutional confidence.
And we are talking about huge street-level clashes, unprecedented deployment of state surveillance technology, and a national parliament that has been brought to an absolute grinding halt.
So today, we are tracing those dominoes. We are going to look at the mechanics of the chaos on the streets of Bihar, analyze that legislative gridlock in parliament, and then examine how this all connects to, international geopolitical power struggles.
Right, and we will also look at a devastating environmental crisis in Assam that is being completely overshadowed by all this political noise. Our mission for this deep dive is to really unpack this massive fallout and figure out the underlying mechanisms of what is actually happening.
And just a quick note for you listening, you will notice as we go through this that the claims coming from all sides, the ruling BJP, the opposition Congress, and the newly formed youth coalition, the Cockroach Janta Party, or CJP, they are fiercely contradictory.
Yeah, highly polarized stuff. So to be clear, our goal today isn't to tell you who is right or take any sides. We're just impartially reporting the raw architecture of this crisis based exactly on the source materials, so you can see how this gridlock happened.
Exactly. We are looking at the machinery of the crisis, and to understand that machinery, we have to start at the initial point of failure, which is the physical protests.
Right, the NEET exam.
Yeah, the NEET exam is the sole gateway for medical education in India. It represents the hopes of millions of students competing for a tiny fraction of available seats. So when that system loses integrity due to paper leaks, it taps into this massive underlying reservoir of anxiety about unemployment.
And the future in general, really.
Yeah.
Gen Z students are just mobilized out into the streets, and the state's response has been highly militarized.
To very militarized.
There's one incident that really illustrates this escalation. Down in Siwan, Bihar, a policeman was suspended after firing an AK-47 assault rifle into the air to disperse student protesters.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, using military-grade hardware for a student protest is a massive deviation from standard crowd control.
It points to a profound breakdown in operational command. Standard operating procedure for riot control involves tear gas, water cannons, or lethus. But senior police officials confirmed that the constable who fired the weapon belonged to an intelligence unit.
Wait, an intelligence unit?
Yeah, and these units are typically tasked with covert operations, tracking hardened criminals, not managing civilian protests.
Right.
So the fact that an intelligence officer was deployed in riot gear, pointing an assault rifle at a crowd of students and firing at least 3 rounds, it indicates that the local state apparatus became completely disorganized and overwhelmed by the scale of the mobilization. Even the police command acknowledged the weapon was used without justification.
Which is wild. And, that level of state panic led to a very tense truce. The Cockroach Janta Party, the CJP, who are spearheading the movement, halted their 36-day agitation after the government promised a no-action policy against the demonstrators.
Right, a fragile truce.
Yeah, very fragile. In some regions, the state is honoring this mechanism of de-escalation. Like in Bihar, the Home Department is actively withdrawing cases against 694 detainees, releasing minors, and dropping charges against politicians who were arrested.
But that is just the regional approach to keeping the peace. The CJP warns that this truce is fracturing on a national level. They are accusing the central government of breaching the no-action assurance entirely.
Because we are seeing starkly contradictory responses depending on the state, right?
Exactly. Look at West Bengal. The state government there ignored the CJP's appeals and arrested 16 people, with 70 more identified.
Jeez.
And crucially, they are utilizing the newly enforced West Bengal Public Safety and Control of Antisocial Activities Act.
Right, which isn't just a standard arrest.
No, not at all. This specific law allows for preventative detention for up to 12 months without access to legal representation.
Wait, 12 months without a lawyer? Just based on suspicion?
Exactly. It changes the entire legal landscape of a protest. Standard criminal law requires the state to prove you committed a crime after the fact. But preventive detention laws shift the dynamic entirely.
Meaning they can just lock you up if they think you might do something?
Right. The state can incarcerate individuals based on the suspicion that they might commit a disruptive act in the future. So by bypassing standard judicial oversight, the state effectively neutralizes the leadership of a movement before a trial can even begin.
I mean, that creates an incredibly volatile environment for citizens.
Right.
And it's not just Bengal. In Uttar Pradesh, the Samajwadi Party alleges that students are being abducted in unmarked vehicles by special police teams.
Yeah, the unpredictability is intense.
It is. The situation is so bad that the Congress Party's student wing, the NSUI, actually launched a dedicated helpline just for harassed students across Delhi and other states.
And that unpredictability is heavily amplified by the introduction of advanced technological surveillance. The Delhi police initiated this massive verification exercise at the Jantar Mantar protest site, deploying live facial recognition systems.
Right.
They essentially cross-referenced real-time CCTV footage of the crowds against existing criminal databases.
And the Delhi police released the data from that facial recognition sweep, and the sheer volume of flags is staggering. They claimed they flagged 2,873 individuals as criminal record holders actively participating in the protest.
Almost 3,000 people.
Yeah, and they categorized 989 of them as being involved in heinous crimes, specifically linking 101 people to murder cases and 62 to attempted murder. But, I mean, I really have to push back on this framing.
How so?
Flagging nearly 3,000 quote-unquote habitual offenders at a student rally, is this actually a genuine security measure, or is it a chilling surveillance tactic designed to just discredit a youth movement? I mean, it feels like using a sledgehammer to crack a nut, but the sledgehammer has a camera attached to it.
Well, we have to analyze both the police rationale and the structural impact here. Law enforcement argues this is a necessary mapping exercise. Historically, large-scale protests have been...
If you're a QuickBooks customer looking to grow without the growing pains, you need the Intuit ERP, the AI-native ERP that upgrades right from QuickBooks. Learn more at intuit.com/ERP.
hijacked by outside agitators or career criminals looking to escalate violence.
Right, so they see it as preemptive.
Yeah, they view real-time database matching as a safety measure. But, as you pointed out, the timing and the scale of the deployment serve a distinct secondary function. It fundamentally alters the nature of the space.
Because it paints the whole protest as a criminal gathering.
Exactly. By publicly releasing these statistics, the state categorizes the protest not just as a site of political dissent, but as a site of inherent criminality.
And the surveillance only seems to go one way. You know,
Right.
the police have remained completely silent on counter allegations that plainclothes officers without name tags were actively harassing protesters and women during the march.
The state is using advanced tech to watch the citizens, while actively obfuscating the citizens' ability to demand accountability.
Exactly. And that demand for accountability on the streets is currently tearing the roof off the very place where accountability is supposed to be legislated in national parliament.
Right.
The chaos has completely paralyzed the highest legislative bodies. The Rajya Sabha, the upper house, is effectively deadlocked. They've been facing multiple successive adjournments in a single day.
The opposition, led by Mallikarjun Kharge, is utilizing parliamentary procedure to basically block all functioning. They are demanding that Home Minister Amit Shah make a formal statement regarding the police brutality against the students, specifically that AK-47 incident in Bihar.
Right, before any other legislative business is conducted.
Because stalling a parliamentary house is a very powerful mechanism of opposition. They are refusing to allow the government to dictate the daily agenda.
Like with that national honor bill, right?
Yeah. The government intended to debate the Prevention of Insults to National Honor Bill, which seeks to increase penalties for disrespecting the flag or the Constitution. But the opposition refused to let it proceed, forcing the government to either address the youth crisis on record or accept a completely stalled legislative session.
Meanwhile, in the Lok Sabha, the lower house, the government actually introduced their legislative fix to the exam leaks. It's called the Public Examination Amendment Bill.
And it is harsh.
Very. This law proposes massive deterrence measures, including up to 10 years in prison and fines reaching 50 lakh rupees for anyone involved in paper leaks. The government, via Parliamentary Affairs Minister Kiran Rijiju, argues that the youth are demanding a solution and accuses the opposition of obstructing the very bill designed to protect students' futures.
Which represents an attempt to solve a structural vulnerability with pure punitive force. The logic is that astronomically high stakes will deter the criminal syndicates orchestrating the leaks.
But does that actually fix the system?
Well, critics argue no. They say harsh penalties do not fix the underlying technological or administrative flaws in how the exams are generated, printed, and distributed.
And the political theater surrounding this legislative push is just surreal. I mean, consider the optics regarding the former education minister, Dharmendra Pradhan. He literally just resigned because of this historic institutional failure.
Yeah.
Yet, he returns to Parliament as a regular MP, and he receives a hero's welcome from the ruling coalition. The NDA MPs are chanting for him, crowning him, wrapping him in traditional shawls, while he declares himself a quote-unquote street fighter.
It's quite the image.
It is like watching a split-screen movie. On one side, the government is introducing draconian, historic laws to fix a catastrophic failure. And on the other side, the minister who oversaw that exact failure is being paraded like a victorious gladiator.
Well, it is a calculated visual paradox designed to preserve political capital. By orchestrating that reception, the ruling party is projecting defiance to their base.
So it's about narrative control.
Exactly. The mechanism here is narrative control. They are signaling that Pradhan's resignation was like a noble sacrifice for accountability rather than an admission of administrative incompetence or corruption. It is a vital strategy for a government trying to maintain an aura of invulnerability during a massive crisis.
Which brings us to another massive paradox regarding the government's attempt to fix the exam system itself, the Nilekani paradox. The Prime Minister just appointed tech billionaire Nandan Nilekani to head the high-level committee to completely reform the national exam system.
And that appointment is deeply ironic given the historical context of Indian digitization.
Right, because Nandan Nilekani is the original architect of the Aadhaar project, the National Biometric Identification System.
Right. He sought to map the data of over 1 billion citizens, and he was appointed to that role back in 2009 under the previous Congress-led UPA government.
And the Congress Party is aggressively highlighting this contradiction right now. Years ago, the BJP completely vilified Nilekani. I mean, during election campaigns, they mocked his technological initiatives. They labeled Aadhaar a profound threat to national security and a massive waste of public funds.
Yeah.
Yet today, this same government is trusting him to design a fail-safe digital architecture to save the futures of millions of students.
It really reveals the fluidity of political memory and expediency. The Congress Party is using this to force a wedge. They're asking a very specific question: were the BJP's past allegations against Nilekani's competence and security true or false?
Good question.
Right. If false, they demand an apology for years of political smearing. If true, they question why a known security risk is running a vital national reform panel.
It shifts the focus entirely from the mechanics of exam reform to a debate about the Prime Minister's political consistency. And on top of that, student groups like the All India Democratic Students Organization, or AIDSO, are rejecting the committee entirely.
Right, they see it as a corporate move.
Exactly. They are labeling it a corporate maneuver, arguing that appointing tech billionaires doesn't solve grassroots educational disparities. And they are demanding the total abolition of the National Testing Agency.
And this dynamic where a decentralized, unconventional force completely gridlocks a massive established institution and forces it into uncomfortable political compromises, it isn't confined to Indian politics right now.
No, it's really not.
The underlying mechanics of asymmetrical pressure are catching global attention and mirroring international power struggles.
Yeah, the sheer scale of a 36-day mobilization by the CJP has broken out of the domestic news cycle. Over in London, climate activist Greta Thunberg actually spoke at a gathering organized by the Students' Federation of India, the SFI.
And Thunberg framed the Indian student movement as a prime example of people power, urging global solidarity. This shows how a domestic administrative failure regarding a medical exam has been successfully interpreted on the global stage as a broader fight for democratic rights and resistance against state repression.
Right. And that SFI event was ostensibly to celebrate the CJP forcing the education minister's resignation, but it was also organized to mourn the 21 students who allegedly died by suicide following the leaks.
Which internationalizes the emotional stakes. And by doing that, the movement gains leverage that the Indian government cannot easily silence through domestic censorship or local police action.
And we're seeing that exact same mechanism of asymmetrical leverage playing out in global geopolitics, specifically between the United States and Iran.
Yeah, that situation is shifting rapidly.
It is. U.S. President Donald Trump claims that Washington and Tehran are currently engaged in good friendly talks, to the point where he has actually paused a 2-week American bombing campaign.
Which is a sudden strategic shift in what's been a very volatile 5-month conflict. The U.S. halted airstrikes, with military commanders reportedly citing depleted air munitions, though. The president denied that claim. But the context surrounding these quote-unquote friendly talks illustrates the limits of traditional power. Because Iran-backed proxy groups in Iraq and Yemen are actively launching coordinated drone strikes on petroleum sites and pipelines deep within Saudi Arabia.
Wow.
And simultaneously, Iran's Central Military Command is accusing the U.S. of enforcing an illegal maritime blockade at the Strait of Hormuz.
So the United States is attempting to project control, threatening to resume airstrikes if negotiations fail, while their adversaries' allies are literally flying drones into global oil facilities.
Exactly.
I mean, is there a common thread here about the limits of traditional power, whether it's Gen Z students in India forcing a cabinet minister's resignation, or a global superpower having to negotiate amidst drone strikes in the Middle East? It seems like massive established institutions are increasingly being forced to yield to unconventional decentralized forces.
Yeah, that is the defining geopolitical shift of this decade. In India, a decentralized youth movement utilized sustained physical presence and a raw public outrage to basically outmaneuver the traditional state apparatus. The police and the parliament found themselves paralyzed by a force that didn't adhere to standard political lobbying.
And then looking abroad.
Right. In the Middle East, the United States possesses overwhelming conventional military superiority, aircraft carriers, fighter jets, guided missiles. Yet they are navigating a conflict where the adversary utilizes decentralized proxy militias and cheap asymmetrical drone technology.
Right, like a $20,000 drone can bypass a multi-million-dollar defense system and cripple a billion-dollar oil facility.
Precisely. Traditional top-down exercises of power, like massive airstrikes, reach a point of diminishing returns both politically and materially. It forces a superpower to the negotiating table, while minor, highly disruptive attacks continue to chip away at their leverage. The old rules of engagement simply no longer apply.
But, while political survival and global power struggles consume all the oxygen, crises that don't immediately threaten the political order are just being ignored. Which brings us to a stark, devastating reality in Assam that is struggling to break through the noise of the exam leaks.
Yeah, the situation in Assam is a catastrophic recurring tragedy. We're currently looking at 68 people dead and nearly 10 lakh, that's 1 million individuals displaced or affected across 25 districts due to massive flooding of the Brahmaputra River basin.
And Congress President Karchiz is fiercely criticizing the BJT over this. He's pointing out that in their 2016 and 2021 Assam Vision documents, the ruling party explicitly promised to make Assam flood-free.
Right.
They have had a decade of a double-engine government, meaning the same party controls both the state and central legislatures, and Karja argues they have completely failed to build a comprehensive system for flood control.
And that critique hinges on the difference between reactive relief and proactive scientific environmental management.
Okay, unpack that a bit.
Well, currently, the government approach basically relies on post-disaster compensation and temporary sandbagging. But Karji is outlining the necessity for permanent, scientifically designed solutions.
So how do those permanent solutions actually work, mechanically, compared to what is happening now?
Well, it requires treating the hydrology of the region as an integrated system. Instead of just handing out relief funds after a village is underwater, modern flood management requires massive wetland restoration.
Right, because wetlands absorb water.
Exactly. They act as natural sponges, absorbing massive volumes of monsoon overflow before it even reaches populated areas. It requires accountable river basin management to control the flow velocity of the Brahmaputra, modern early warning telemetry systems, and, building climate-resilient infrastructure that elevates critical transport and power lines above historical floodplains.
So it addresses the root cause rather than just managing the symptoms. But when you look at how the government prioritizes its response, a really harsh reality emerges. It took 36 days of youth protests over an exam to force a cabinet minister's resignation, extract direct promises from the prime minister, and get a highly punitive, historic bill drafted and introduced in a deadlocked parliament.
Right.
Meanwhile, Assam has been waiting 10 years for a permanent solution to a scientifically understood flood crisis.
Right.
Why do some crises trigger immediate dramatic legislative panic, while others are allowed to become normalized annual tragedies.
Honestly, it is entirely a calculation of political visibility and the immediate threat to power.
Explain that.
Well, the NEET exam leak mobilized millions of middle-class youth and their parents. This is a highly visible, highly vocal demographic that directly threatened the ruling party's core narrative of competence and meritocracy. And this is particularly dangerous with key state elections on the horizon.
So the political cost of ignoring them was existential.
Exactly. The Assam floods, conversely, primarily affect marginalized communities in geographically distant, complex terrains.
Right.
The human and economic costs are immeasurably higher, but the immediate political cost of inaction has historically been lower. This allows the crisis to be managed through temporary, highly publicized relief efforts rather than solved through complex, multi-decade, expensive infrastructure projects.
Man. Let's just take a breath and map the incredible tension we have covered in today's deep dive. We started with the sheer chaos stemming from the NEET exam leaks, where a breakdown in institutional trust put students on the streets facing intelligence officers with AK-47s.
Yeah.
And we saw how the state responded to a fragile youth truce with mass biometric surveillance and preventive detention laws.
We then followed that pressure directly into Parliament, examining how the opposition weaponized procedure to stall the upper house, while the government attempted to project strength through harsh new laws and contradictory political theater surrounding the former education minister and the architect of Udhar.
From there, we traced how the mechanics of this decentralized resistance mirrored asymmetrical proxy warfare in the Middle East, catching the attention of global activists. And finally, we grounded ourselves in the flooded plains of Assam, looking at the science of flood management to understand the tragic disparity in how a state allocates its political urgency.
It is a complex architecture of a society grappling with a profound lack of trust in its established systems, where traditional power is constantly being outmaneuvered.
As we wrap up, I want to leave you listening with a final thought about a hidden current running through almost all of these stories today: the overarching role of technology.
Oh, absolutely.
Think about the underlying mechanics. Technology is the root cause of the youth's baseline anxiety, with fears that AI and automation will wipe out their future job prospects, making exams like NEET a life-or-death bottleneck.
Yeah.
Technology is the ultimate tool of state control, with police weaponizing real-time facial recognition networks to categorize political dissent as criminality. And yet, technology is also the proposed savior, with the government bringing in a billionaire architect of biometric databases to digitize and fix the broken educational system.
It is the defining, inescapable double-edged sword of modern governance.
As you watch this rapidly shifting landscape unfold, I want you to ponder this. In the years to come, will technology ultimately be the great equalizer that empowers citizens to organize, bypass traditional hierarchies, and demand strict accountability? Or will it become the ultimate frictionless tool used by established institutions to police and neutralize them before they even step out into the streets? Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the headlines, keep looking for the underlying mechanics, and we will catch you next time.